Today's chapter is called Calm Waters. First of all, I want to thank everyone who's made it this far. You know, I often wondered how I would start this part, this transition, into becoming a woman of faith. Because the version of me I'm about to introduce you to is someone who found peace after the storm. She's the version of me that Allah never let go of. Many of the stories I've shared with you, I wrote in 2023 and 2024. And yes, even some in 2025. But I want you to know this journey didn't start with a pen in hand. It began the day I arrived on this planet, nearly 30 years ago. So in case you thought everything was born in 2025, I'm sorry to disappoint you. This was divine timing. Allah didn't allow me to write certain experiences until the exact moment they were meant to be shared. My spiritual path has been nearly 4 years in the making, but the written journey only began in 2023. The awakening, though, that started quietly at the end of 2021 and crept into 2022. So before I begin, I just want to give you some backstory, because from where I stand, it's that deep. Back in 2023, during the autumn months, August and September, things began to shift. In August specifically, I had recently come down from an intense awakening. I was catching glimpses of reality. I was still in and out of relapsing on substances, but my faith was pulling me back toward the right path. It wasn't discipline that saved me. It was guilt, the aching knowledge that I wasn't doing good for myself. That ache became the push I needed to start doing good for myself. But even as time stood still, I would panic about life. I often believed I was the only one who felt things the way I did. Every time I entered dream states, I'd find myself in other dimensions, doing random things, until a gateway would open and I'd follow it. And as my eyes began to open back into this world, I'd hear a woman's voice gently say, "Welcome back to Earth." This happened for several days in a row. It almost drove me insane. But deep down, I started to feel like I was meant to do something. That maybe I had a purpose. That maybe Allah was telling me, don't give up just yet. When I finally had the willpower to stop using completely, life got very quiet. But with that quiet came a hollow feeling. I cried, often, not just for my past, but for the reality I had to live through. Even after I had changed, the hollowness remained. I asked myself, why do I still feel empty? And the answer came, because nobody ever stood up for me, ever. I stood up for myself. Even the drugs were just my attempt to feel normal, to feel like I belonged somewhere. I had been drowning long before substances ever touched my hands. That autumn, I started to remember my past. It haunted me during the calm after my awakening. And without realizing it, I was becoming stoic before I even knew what that word meant. Then one day it hit me. I didn't know who I was. Not really. No one had ever asked me that question. I just realized it one day. Outside of my name, my kindness, my love for art and music, who was I? And that's when the identity crisis began. It made me feel like I had suffered so much, yet still lacked the knowledge of myself. I remember scrolling through TikTok when a song came on that said, "Something got a hold of me lately. No, I don't know myself anymore." I believe it was "Lose Control" by Teddy. That line, it broke me open. I had endured so much, but still I was left with emptiness. Soon after, I ran into some legal trouble. Nothing serious, I promise. But I ended up staying with my mom secretly, because she wasn't allowed to have anyone on her lease. I shuffled back and forth between her place and my little sister's home, But truthfully, I wasn't welcome there. Even though I rarely touched their food, they accused me of eating it all. They even called me dirty. That crushed me. Then I found out my stepfather told my sister, "Never let Nina into that house I paid for." That broke something inside me. My mother warned me not to grow too attached to the younger siblings who were his, to protect myself. And then my little sister told me something I've never shared publicly before. She said, "Dad once told me, don't eat or hang with Asnina. She will poison you." That was between July and September, and emotionally, I was spiraling all over again. Recounting this still hurts, but I have to tell it, because if you're going to walk my path, you have to understand the ground I walked on. After that, I became completely isolated, housebound. Sometimes I'd sit by my mom's door and just admire the sky, the stillness, the silence, existence. I spent most of my days crying. I accepted Allah, but deep down, I was mad at him. I just didn't dare admit it out loud. I felt defeated. I didn't want friends. I didn't want relationships. I told my cousin Medina, and even my other cousin, I needed space. I had nothing, so I wanted to be left alone. In that isolation, I began to gain weight quickly from sobriety and stress eating. But something told me my mind was ready to learn again. So I had this idea. Why not act like a student again? I grabbed the book I received during Ramadan from the mosque, Muhammad and the Course of Islam by H.M. Balyuzi. It was thick, with big words. So I treated it like school. I made flashcards, underlined new vocabulary, studied like I was back in elementary. I loved pretending I was in class again, learning about the Prophet, peace be upon him, learning about myself. My eyes used to ache all night, probably from being dilated after years of substance use, but I never knew for sure. Still, during isolation, I began praying again. One day I was walking through my sister's apartment complex. She pointed out a table where neighbors left things they didn't want anymore. I passed by it, and there, stacked neatly, was a bundle of eye drops. No lie. It was the first time something I had been quietly suffering with was met with a solution in front of my face. I asked myself, is God listening to me? I took all of it. Nobody knew but me. I was nearly 2 months clean, but I was still struggling with vaping and eating nonstop. Something beyond this world was nudging me to stop. But I didn't understand what I couldn't see. Then one late night, I felt a presence, like the angel of death was near. I was so full, I couldn't breathe. I knew something was beside me. I made myself throw up. But it wasn't just food. It was blood. I panicked. Told my mom, "I need to go to the ER. I'm throwing up blood." After everything I had survived, the idea of dying just didn't sit right. From that moment forward, my prayers became firm. I prayed through OCD spikes, disturbing thoughts, and emotional chaos. I cried ugly, desperate tears. I begged Allah to change my destiny. I told him, "This isn't fair. I grew up unloved and uneducated on life." In isolation, I remembered everyone I had hurt, sometimes without even knowing. Allah brought my entire life to the surface. I crumbled. For days I cried. I cried for my cousin Abdikadir. He never got to live. I couldn't save him. That grief, it lives in my bones. My journey of addiction started with having him beside me. I didn't quit using because it reminded me of him. I told Allah, "Let me live." I'll fix what I've done. I'll help others. Just let me live. I want to live. The crying made me feel hollow, but not in a sad way. Just emptied. If Allah had taken my soul then, I would have accepted it. What would I leave behind? No children, no spouse, no home. Even my siblings don't really talk to me. But I still stood at the third of the night for an hour and a half, talking to Allah, because in my isolation, He was and still is my only friend. And then one night, right around the time the war in Palestine broke out on October 7th, I stood on my prayer mat. I don't quite remember what overwhelmed me with such heavy emotions on this particular day. But I often cried about the lonely destiny He gave me. So when I stood on that mat and greeted Allah to start my prayer, it was as though He greeted me back. He greeted me back. I didn't hear a voice. But I heard Him say, "My beloved servant." It felt like wind moving through my body, like I had been acknowledged by my Creator. I cried again. And it was in that month that Allah started guiding me towards something new. I began to have an idea to read about other Muslims who were Black and what suffering they have endured during their lifetime, their pain, their history, their resistance. Like, how did they make it in this planet Earth? Never did I ever think for once that Allah was answering my internal questions about why I was Black. Allah was opening the doors for me to find my identity. Welcome to my next series, The People of the Book.